Life is very unpredictable. It is impossible to predict what will happen next. There are times when everything seems to be going well, but something unexpected happens. Some people die from minor injuries, but others miraculously survive despite dire circumstances. In today's video, we'll tell you about 10 people who overcame seemingly impossible situations. Number 1. Anna Bagenholm. The average temperature of the human body is 98 degrees Fahrenheit. According to medical science, death is inevitable if the human body temperature drops below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It is almost impossible to survive, but Anna from Norway proved it wrong. In May 1999, Anna arrived skiing with her friends on a snowfield. Previously, she visited the area to ski, but this time her luck was not with her while skiing, and she slipped and fell straight into a giant puddle filled with ice-covered water. She tried to get out of the ice pit, but failed and found a hole through which she could breathe. Her friends tried to pull her out for 40 minutes, but failed. Anna's body temperature was constantly dropping because the water was so cold. Hypothermia occurs when a person's body temperature drops rapidly. Anna's friends called for help, but it took another 40 minutes for that help to arrive. After spending 80 minutes in the freezing water, the thick ice was cut as soon as help arrived, and Anna was rescued. Upon arrival at the hospital, her body temperature was 56 degrees Fahrenheit, and she was clinically dead. A team of 100 medical staff worked 9 hours to bring Anna's body temperature back to normal. Anna was on the ventilator, and her body was paralyzed. Surprisingly, within a few weeks, she recovered completely. This case surprised even the medical profession. Interestingly, Anna works in the same hospital where Anna's life was saved. 2. Anthony Borges. Sometimes a person dies with just one bullet, but 15-year-old Anthony proved this wrong. Anthony was a student at Stoneman Douglas High School in America, and as usual, he was sitting in his classroom. Apart from him, there were 20 other students in the class. Suddenly, a man with a pistol entered the school and started randomly firing at everyone. This unknown person opened fire and killed 17 students. Anthony and his classmates were terrified when they heard fire. When the gunman heard Anthony and his classmates screaming in terror, he began marching towards their classroom. Anthony was determined not to let him enter the classroom, so he closed the classroom door and stood in front of the door himself. The assailant tried to force open the door, but Anthony did not give up and held on. The attacker started firing at the door, and Anthony was shot but still did not open the door, and eventually, the assailant fled. Anthony was hit by 5 bullets, but he saved his classmates. He had been shot in the stomach and lungs and was sure to die. Surprisingly, when he was taken to the hospital, he underwent 13 operations. After spending 2 months in the hospital, he fully recovered. Everyone was amazed at how he survived after being shot so many times. Number 3. Yahya Abdi. It was 2014, and 15-year-old Yahya was living in California, but his mother was in a refugee camp in Ethiopia. He wanted to meet his mother, but he had no means of going there, so he planned to do something that no one expected. He arrived at the airport and spent 6 hours trying to sneak past security to board a plane. After getting past security, Yahya hid behind the plane's wheel in an attempt to board. He had no idea where the plane would take him, but he hoped it would take him to his mother. As the plane started to take off, Yahya hid in the plane's landing gear, and the plane took off. The Boeing 767 was now flying at an altitude of 38,000 feet and had a 15-year-old boy in its landing gear. The temperature at this altitude was about minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and he had no oxygen. He was unconscious. When the plane landed, the crew became aware of the boy's presence in the landing gear. Yahya, unconscious, was taken to the hospital. Everyone thought he was dead, but after receiving medical attention at the hospital, he regained consciousness, and to everyone's surprise, he survived. It is impossible to survive in minus 80-degree temperatures without oxygen. Number 4. Eating human flesh. This fact will surely shock you. You may have heard that some people survive for days without food, but have you ever heard of someone surviving on human flesh? In 1972, a plane of the Uruguayan Air Force took off on a flight with 45 people. They were going to play a rugby match. However, while flying over an icy area, something went wrong with the plane and it crashed. In this crash, 20 people died instantly, while 25 people somehow survived. Of the 25 survivors, 8 more died shortly after. Now the remaining people were in heavy snowfall at an altitude of 13,000 feet. They were hiding wherever they could get shelter to protect themselves from the snowfall. For them, there were 2 issues. Firstly, they had to dispose of the bodies of their comrades, and secondly, they had nothing to eat. They accomplished both objectives in an unexpected manner. As they waited for help, they began to starve. There was no food, so they started eating the flesh of their dead friends to save their lives. They managed to survive in these conditions for 2 months before a rescue team arrived to save them and return them to their homes. This was a trip they would never forget. Number 5. Ocean survival. Consider yourself alone in the middle of the deep blue sea with no sign of land in sight. Consider how many days you could spend like this. Even a single day would be terrifying and lonely. But a man from China made the impossible possible by spending 133 days alone at sea. In 1942, a boat set off on a voyage from Cape Town, South Africa. There were many people on the boat. After a few days of travel, the ship was 1,200 kilometers from the coast when it was hit by massive waves, causing the ship to sink. Everyone tried desperately to save themselves, but the boat sank. Except for one Chinese man who discovered a large floating piece of the sinking ship and boarded it. Everyone drowned. He was lucky to find food and drink among the floating parts of the boat. He was now alone in the middle of the sea waiting for help. Cold and alone, each day seemed like an eternity. Eventually, a Brazilian fisherman rescued the man after he had been at sea for 133 days. Can you imagine being at sea for 133 days by yourself? Number 6. Mauro Prosperi. The world's largest desert, the Sahara Desert, hosts a 150-mile race known as the Marathon des Sables. It is considered the toughest race in the world because of the heat and dangerous sandstorms that could kill you. In 1994, Mauro Prosperi, a racer from Italy, participated in this race. During the race, he encountered a sandstorm. Mauro survived the storm, but when the storm subsided, he was lost. He needed to figure out where to go. He had nothing to eat and only a half a bottle of water to drink, which was quickly depleted. He looked around but couldn't find anything to drink. He eventually discovered a nearby Muslim shrine that was infested with bats. He looked around the shrine for some water to drink, but he was disappointed. After trying to hold on for as long as he could, he decided to take drastic measures. He was left with no choice but to cut off the heads of bats and drink their blood because there was nothing to eat or drink. As a result, he lived in this manner for 3 days, but he refused to live on the bat's blood. His thirst for life drove him to slit his wrist, but death was not in his future because his body was dehydrated and his blood wasn't flowing. Even though he was on the verge of death, he continued to drink the blood of more bats. He spent 8 more days drinking the blood of the bats, and on the 9th day, a miracle occurred. A shepherd passed by, saw him there, helped him, gave him water, and showed him the way out of the desert. Number 7. Julian Kepke. Being alone in the Amazon rainforest for a day or night is no small feat, as it is one of the world's most dangerous forests. Julian, despite this, survived 11 days alone in the Amazon jungle. It was 1971, and Julian was on a flight. The plane had just taken off when lightning struck, causing it to break up. Passengers began to fall from the plane as it broke. Julian was one of those who fell into the dangerous Amazon jungle. He was severely injured when he fell into the dense forest, and he was terrified because he had no shelter and no way to protect himself from the dangerous animals. Julian was lucky to have his bag, which contained plenty of chocolates and candies. For 11 days, he rationed his chocolates and drank water from a nearby stream and started giving up hope of being rescued. On the 11th day, a rescue team discovered his locality and he was rescued. Despite being alone with such dangerous species of animals, Julian was unharmed. Number 8. 42 days on the water, Helen Klaben. Without food, how long can you survive? Maybe for a few days? But what if you go without food for more than a month? Helen, 21, wanted to go to Canada, but the flights were expensive. An inexperienced pilot offered her a cheaper flight in a small plane, and she accepted. While passing over a remote part of Canada, they encountered a blizzard and the plane crashed. Both the pilot and Helen survived, but both were injured. There was snow all around them, and no people could be seen anywhere. They had cans of fish and some fuel. They kept themselves warm by burning fuel and lived by eating fish and melting the ice for drinking water. After a week, they ran out of food. They were starving while waiting for help with no food. There appeared to be no hope of rescue, and they had to survive solely on water. They went 42 days without food before a rescue team rescued them, moved them to a safe place, and fed them. Only those two could appreciate that delicious food after 42 long days. Number 9. Struck by lightning 7 times. When lightning strikes, it destroys buildings and trees and kills people. But one person in the world has a special relationship with lightning. His name is Roy Sullivan. Roy Sullivan was struck by lightning 7 times in his life, each time on a different part of his body. But he survived each time. Roy's leg was damaged in a lightning strike, but he survived. Roy's hair caught fire as a result of a second lightning strike, but again, he survived. A man who defeated lightning 7 times had to be included in the Guinness Book of World Records. Number 10. Cut in two by a train. As seen in many videos, it's impossible to escape if a train hits a vehicle. If a person gets hit by a train, there is no question of survival. Now, the incident we are going to tell you about will shock you. A man named Truman Duncan fell while crossing the train tracks, and the train ran over him. Both his legs were amputated, and one kidney failed. Because his body was bleeding profusely and both legs were severed from his body, onlookers thought he had died. Despite being cut into two, the man managed to call an ambulance using his mobile phone. To save his life, several surgeries were performed at the hospital. The doctors were amazed at how the man survived despite being that badly injured. His survival was a miracle because he only had one kidney and no legs. Today's video shows how many people miraculously accomplish the impossible. If death is not part of their destiny, it cannot harm them. That's it for today. If you liked the video, comment and please give us a thumbs up below. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating videos. Thanks for watching.